Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Once again, another episode of Exploder just for you. My name is Dan. This is Exploder, as I've already said. And on this one, I want to talk about, actually, instead of going into the past like I have before, I want to talk about the current state of wrestling right now. I don't do it that often. A lot of stuff I do is nostalgia-based. But I want to talk about wrestling right now because I think it's very interesting. It's very, I don't want to use the word thrilling, but I think it has potential. Let's put it that way. Everyone's talking about, if you're looking at wrestling online, if you're watching it on the network or TV, if you're on a website or listening to a podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, little cheap plug. Is it a plug if you're doing the middle of it? Doesn't matter. Anyway, you know about All Elite Wrestling, AEW, whatever. This new promotion that's coming from the Khan family, who own the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Young Bucks, Cody, Rhodes sometimes, legal, and so many others are going to be involved. And it's looking to be, potentially, now this is only potential. I mean, there's been a lot of, next WCWs along the way. So is it going to be that way? I don't know. That's potential. Who's to say? But right now it looks like they have a financial backing. It looks like they're at least building a roster, let's put it that way. And they're looking toward a new direction. They've got creative people behind it. So it has more potential than a lot of companies. I mean, it's the best potential for a second national company since TNA showed so much promise so many years ago, and then they really squandered it by hiring Vince Russo three times? I don't know, doesn't matter. And now whatever local redneck TV channel they're on, I mean, they're about to be on, they have a show on Twitch, but honestly, they're about to be on Twitch almost exclusively if they keep this up, because right there, they're on the Pursuit channel. Like, I don't know what these channels are until Impact announces what channel they're going to. So maybe this time next year we'll find out a new channel. Who's to say? Slight rant to the side there. Leave that alone. Anyway, AEW has potential, and it has the most potential of any company, and at least over the past decade. So let's talk about who is and who isn't. Right now, Kenny Omega's on the bubble. Kenny Omega is, he was up until recently. He was the IWGP champion. His contract was coming up. He lost the belt to Hiroshi Tanahashi, and he's officially leaving, but he can't announce where he's going until February 1st. So he's sort of in this bubble. Honestly, he'll probably end up in All Elite Wrestling. Everybody else is there. The Bucks are there. The Young Bucks. So they, because the roster needs some tag team who looks like the Rockers and super kicks everyone all the time. Like I said, aforementioned Cody Rhodes. Chris Jericho, that's a new one, and that's really interesting because Chris Jericho, as little as a year ago, was saying he'd wrestle for other people, but he never wrestled for anyone else in the United States that wasn't Vince McMahon. I assume there was some falling out there. I don't even know if it was personal, because I don't know him. I don't want to speculate, but there had to have been something, because this guy was talking about a year ago by basically saying, well, in North America, I'm only going to work for WWE. And then he went and did his cruise and all these things, and then something happened to where he's with All Elite Wrestling now. He's there, and he's in, and, all in, but I guess he's going to be there, and it's going to be, he'll give that mainstream appeal to it. He's not The Rock, he's not Steve Austin, he's not a Hulk Hogan. Please don't make that mistake. But he is enough of if you're a wrestling fan and you're interested in All Elite Wrestling, having Chris Jericho there is a little bit of it's that bridge between these guys you don't know and this guy you do know who can still work, and it'll bring that together. So I think Chris Jericho is a good get. Again, it's not a Steve Austin, but it's a good get for what it is. Of course, he'll be there at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view in Las Vegas on May 25th. That's going to be their next big pay-per-view for the company. I guess that'll be, part of AEW, but All In was the first one, and this is the second one. And the first one was a success, especially for being an independent promotion, really wasn't even promotion. All In wasn't even it was an indie show with a great budget and a great venue and a great group of fans and some really great talented people. I question why the six-man tag was the main event. Whatever it was Mysterio and all those guys. I don't quite get that. But, hey, I wasn't booking it. Not my problem. But, so Double or Nothing is their second pay-per-view. It's going to be in May, and Jericho's going to be there. They also signed guys like Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Don't know who the hell that is. Joey Janela, who I've heard stuff about, who's making waves for being a young guy and decently talented. Penelope Ford. Don't know who that is. Christopher Daniels, Scorpio Sky, and Frankie Kazarian. SoCal Underground. Again, 3 talented guys you can't go wrong with. Britt Baker, again, and I'm not, the people I don't understand, the people I don't know, trust me, I'm not dismissing them. I don't know who they are, but I'm not dismissing them. They could be very talented. I bet they are. If they're getting signed to something like this and they're trying to start a promotion from scratch and they're bringing in a bunch of young talent, I guarantee the people they're bringing in aren't scrubs. You know what I mean? So when I say I don't know who they are, I'm not saying it dismissively. I'm saying it as, well, yeah, I don't know who they are, but they could be really talented. I bet you they are. So I'm just really excited to see what some of these guys and girls can do. Britt Baker. And then one of them that was really good, and honestly, it's perfect. It's really a perfect fit, is Pac. Not Sean Waltman, but Pac. P-A-C. Used to be Adrian Neville, or just Neville, because WB hates full names. Elias, Lashley, Andrade, Cesaro. Yeah, they hate names. They hate full names. They just got one name. And anyway, Neville, formerly Neville, Pac, he's back to Pac. That's what he was in the Indies for so many years. Actually, first time I ever saw him wrestle was on an FWA show back in like 2004, 2005. I mean, it was years ago. But very talented guy. Very, very talented guy. But yeah, he got disaffected by WWE and their system and how, they were treating the cruiserweights, or in his opinion, and he left. And he sat there for a while, and they finally released him, and then he went back to Dragon Gate. He went to Dragon Gate. I think he did a show in Dragon Gate, and now he's there, and he was at the press conference, and, he's in. They're also smart here because they're signing people that are maybe past their ring time as performers. Maybe. BJ Whitmer, mainstay of Ring of Honor, really talented guy, he's from Kentucky, but he worked a lot of HWA back in Cincinnati. Talented guy, but he's not necessarily a guy you're going to put in the main event when you're talking about when you're putting him against young guys. But he's a guy who could work in the ring, but honestly, they're bringing him in as a producer, an agent, whatever you want to call it. And they're also bringing in, his name's Monty Sop, Kip Sop, whatever the hell, but Billy Gunn. They're bringing in Billy Gunn as a producer. Again, a guy who has an understanding of psychology, but isn't necessarily going to be working. Could they bring him in and do a job match or a dark match? Yeah, because Billy Gunn, quite frankly, has an ability in the ring that I don't quite understand because he can still go at his age. So that's a possibility. But really, he's being signed as a producer, just a guy to work with the young guys. And that's a smart move. Instead of starting from scratch and thinking you know everything, bringing in guys who have done it before and having them help the young guys. Have them help a Joey Janela. Have them help, these guys that are starting out that you don't really, like, not that they're not good, but they can be better. That's what you need an agent for. That's what you need producers for. That's what you need the guys they've been on the mountain. They've been up there. They've done stuff. Now it's time to take them, and it's a WB system. It's a system that WB uses, when they have people that are either in creative or as a producer, guys who aren't Dean Malenko or an Adam Pearce, guys who aren't in the ring anymore, who aren't in the ring doing it themselves, but they're able to take what they've learned over the years and teach it to the next generation, so that generation can get better, so that generation can learn from them, either creatively or psychologically. Just learn the psychology of the ring and why to do it. So it's really good to have that. I think that's a really good step. It's early, but it's a really great step. And then, of course, on top of all this, there's the rumors. They're talking about the rumors of what's going to happen, there's a lot of potential. There's always potential when a new company starts. I remember when WCW failed, when WCW and ECW went out of business around the same time. March, April 2001, around that time. And right after that, there was a lot of indie guys who had a great idea. I'll make the new company. I remember there was a guy who created a company called Main Event Championship Wrestling, and it was supposed to be this best of both worlds. He was going to pick up ECW guys and WCW guys that WWE had released, and there was a lot of WCW guys that never even made it to. There was a bunch they sent to developmental, what the developmental system was at the time, but there was also a few guys that just got a straight up pink slip. Their time was up. They sent a thing and fired them. And those guys, he was getting those guys that WWE didn't even send a developmental, and they were putting them up. They were going to create this fusion. And I remember Main Event Championship Wrestling had a lot of buzz behind it. I remember especially on the internet, there was a lot of buzz. Like, some random jackwagon starts a promotion in God knows where. Nobody cares. It's pick a promotion. There's a dime a dozen. I mean, anyone here, if you have even a remote concept of your local independent wrestling, can name a bunch of failed promotions that have come over the years. Someone will come in, they'll do a spot show, they'll usually lose money on the deal and never run another one again. Or they'll be the nostalgia tour, so they'll get a promoter to come in and they'll book Greg Valentine and Bruce Beefcake and Virgil. But they'll book these names and they'll put all this money into it. And again, it'll be a Legends Fest type deal, but it'll be a 1-2 show thing. 1 show a year, 2 shows a year. and they'll make their money or whatever money they can be made, but it's not a promotion. But I remember Main Event Championship Wrestling was supposed to have this big hype behind it, and it really was, because they were gonna change everything. You know what happened to it? It didn't. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't happen. It didn't make anything. And then there was World Wrestling All-Stars. Same thing. They had the same thing. Well, we're going to tour in South America. Not South America. Australia. What the hell am I thinking? In Australia, record everything, and then sell it to syndication in the United States. Okay. Then there was the Hulk Hogan XWF, which has been covered almost to death, and I cannot pretend to give the expert analysis, the in-depth analysis that other people can in this, but it didn't get off the ground. The same deal. They filmed it, and they were going to sell it to syndication, and it never came off as anything more than a cheap carbon copy of the AWF, of all these other promotions that have come along before it. You know, do you want to see one of the remaining head shrinkers versus the Bushwhackers? Okay. Greg Valentine, Jim Duggan, guys that, WCW, maybe worked at WCW, WCW's gone. Marty Jannetty and all these guys that were sort of like, they were big in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s, but then by the time 2001, 2002 came along, they really weren't commodities anymore. They really weren't. The first one to do it right was TNA. TNA was the first one to come along and have a better production value. They sort of rode the NWA legacy, which really helped with some of the old school fans. They focused on action, total nonstop action. That was the idea. They were going to focus on in-ring. They brought the cruiserweights, the cruiserweights that WWE had really ignored for a long time, and they did the X Division, and guys like AJ Styles became a national name, even a regional name, but became more or less a national name through TNA Wrestling. He was there for how many years? Till 2014. I mean, that's what TNA did that was right, and of course there was a lot of mistakes they made, and one day I'm going to do an episode on what they did wrong, and again, by no means am I an expert on this, but as a fan, I think as a fan, I have an opinion, and I can look at things and go, okay, that was stupid. Why'd they hire Vince Russo again? Why'd they hire Vince Russo again? Why'd they hire Vince Russo again and not to other network? Why did they convince Billy Corgan that he bought a percentage of the company and then didn't? Anyway, that's a whole episode unto itself. But the first one actually even potentially did things right at first was TNA Wrestling. But TNA Wrestling slowly squandered that. And then for the past, really since Hogan came and went, the company has just been they're a small, and I don't want to disparage them now because I think they're doing fine. They're working hard, and I know some of the guys who are working for them, so I don't want it to be like I'm disparaging the company, because quite frankly, it's another place for guys to work, and I'm never going to disparage any place for a guy to work except for XPW, which doesn't exist anymore, but except for some of these garbage feds who are just constant barbed wire, LSD laced razor wire thumbtacks with, feces on them. I'm not going to ever say, hey, that's a great place. But if it's a legitimate promotion to work in, you can't really fault them for that. And I can't fault anyone for working for them. I can't fault anyone for taking money from them. I can't fault anybody for taking the booking, even if TNA now or Impact now is not near where it was 10 years ago, 15 years. But that's fine. But as far as, I'm not going to disparage the company as it is. It's different. It's crafting a new identity for itself. It's not trying to compete with WWE, and nor should it. It shouldn't have when it did, but it certainly isn't going to try now, and that's fine. All Elite Wrestling, getting back to the topic, what they need to do, they need to look at what TNA did, and they need to go some of the things they did early on. They need to think about that, and they need to think about the production value, which I'm sure they are. I mean, All In was very well produced, especially for, again, an indie show that started from just a couple guys talking. Production value was really good. The pay-per-view market is, again, I don't have facts and figures in front of me, but the pay-per-view market's really profitable if you can draw people in. But you need to look at the model. Don't overextend yourself. Don't think you're going to be WWE right up the gate, because they're not. Because right now, the biggest star they have in the company, as good as Cody Rhodes is, and as somehow popular the Bucks are, the biggest star in the company right now is Chris Jericho. And that's not a knock on Chris Jericho, but like I said, it's not Steve Austin. It's not The Rock. It's not, when WCW got Hulk Hogan, that was a huge get. All Elite Wrestling getting Chris Jericho, it's a get, but it's not earth-shattering. So what they need to understand is they need to manage their expectations, not expect to compete with Vince within the first year, 5 years. It's just not going to happen. I mean, WWE is a juggernaut for a reason, and they're already responding. They're already signing people. They're already offering huge deals to guys that, quite frankly, they don't know how to use. And I think that, just as an opinion, I think that some of the guys they've offered money to, they won't know how to use. They threw, from what I've heard, again, this is only internet, I'm not some insider, but I've heard they threw a big money offer to Kenny Omega. Quite frankly, I don't think they'd know how to use Kenny Omega. I think they'd sign him. I think they'd bring him in. He'd have some great matches with AJ Styles. He'd have some great matches with Daniel Bryan. But after you run through the 2 or 3 guys that would really work with his style really well and have really good matches, they would run him against guys like Brock Lesnar or Braun Strowman. And I don't like Brock Lesnar, but Braun Strowman, and I've said that, he's just Suplex City. It's just lazy because it's just constant. And he can only have good matches against guys who are carrying his ass. But Braun Strowman, while I like Braun Strowman, again, outside of a couple spots, it's a power match. He's a big guy who throws you around. And you have these spots, and you have these things that he can do. It's amazing. But Kenny Omega, could he have a good match with him? Maybe. But, after the first few guys, then you're stuck with, okay, we have a guy who's a really good wrestler against guys who are really good entertainers. And I don't know if they'd know how to use Kenny Omega. But they're making these offers. They made offers to the Bucks. They made offers. And again, they'll get their guys. I mean, they got Adam Cole. And I'm not, I know some guys who hate Adam Cole. Hate him. And they're like, well, Adam Cole, he's not that big a deal. But at the end time, getting him, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, Roderick Strong even, the Undisputed Era, getting those guys was a decent get. Were they main event caliber? Or, none of them are on the main roster. But for NXT, they were a good get. And getting these guys, so every once in a while they'll make a move and they'll get some guys. And that's their system. So they want Kenny Omega. They want the Young Bucks. They want to. Now, is it to get them because they want them, or to get them to hamper All Elite Wrestling? Well, it's probably both. I think they were motivated by All Elite Wrestling starting. Like, now that started, now they really want Kenny Omega. Now they really want the Young Bucks. Now they really want Marty Scurll. Now they really want, name a guy. They want them now that All Elite Wrestling is a possibility. It's probably a little bit of both, but I think All Elite Wrestling sort of tipped their hand, sort of pushed them into it. They sort of had to. Now, they're not, where are they going to see? I don't know. I mean, they got AJ Styles after so many years. They got Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson from New Japan. They got, like I said, the Undisputed Era guys. They got Andrade Cien Almas when he was La Sombra, when he was still one of the hottest guys on the Indies and in Mexico. They got guys, back before he became a flying dumpster fire that couldn't make his entrance without breaking a hip. But they got Mystico, and Mystico at that time was one of the hottest acts in Mexico at the time. They got him. They brought him in. They changed his name. They modified his mask. He became Sin Cara, and it was a whole thing. It was a get. So, they're still able to get guys. Will they get Omega? I don't think they'll get Omega. They didn't get the Bucks. They're not going to get Cody. Cody Rhodes, will he go back one day? I don't know. He ain't going back now. He ain't going back this year. He ain't going back next year. It could be an experiment. It could be a trial and do a couple years, and then it becomes too big, or the owners or the Khan family think it's too much of an investment and drop it. They have to be in wrestling at that level, and I'm only saying this because I've heard this from people who are at that level, but I've heard, I think Eric Bischoff said this, that in wrestling you need to expect to lose money for at least 5 years, at least, to get yourself off the ground. You need a few years to establish a character, and you need about 5, I'm pretty sure he said about 5 years, and expect to lose money. Expect to not make a profit. Expect to just eat it, because you're building a brand and you're building awareness, and it's not going to be profitable right away. Now, if they're willing to, if that's the adage I think it is, if that's what I remember it as, and the Khan family, the owners of this company, are willing to invest in this and willing to eat that for those 5 years and to potentially be something big, awesome, great. If it becomes a 2 or 3 year experiment and they don't like what they're losing and they lose the money, and after it gets to a certain level and they pull their money out, All Elite Wrestling could be, a long-term XWF. It lasts 3 years and then disappeared. Business is what it is, and it's hard to predict now. I think it has potential, not just because of the internet buzz, which is always this big thing, and I think that part of it is, as a wrestling fan, I think that that's something you always have to be concerned about. This could be just internet buzz, and there is buzz about it, but when you're a wrestling fan on the internet, I don't like the term internet wrestling community or the a internet fan. I don't like that, because everyone has the internet. I mean, I get what they're saying, but everyone has the internet. So to me, it's like saying, oh yeah, wrestling fans with electricity. Well, yeah, we all have it. But the people that read about it and people that are interested in it, like myself, who do podcasts about it, we're hearing a lot about it. Now, is the average fan who's watching Monday Night Raw or SmackDown and then going and doing whatever else and not thinking about wrestling until the next week, are they hearing much about it? I don't know. I mean, I read an article earlier, and it was about the roster changes, and it was in Forbes. It was on Forbes' website. Well, I don't know how often the people in Forbes are also checking out wrestling news. So maybe there's a crossover there. Maybe the fact that the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars are interested. Maybe that's going to bring in some sports fans who are a little curious. You know, maybe sort of in an XFL way. Which the XFL's coming, by the way, so I know you're excited. And maybe that crossover. So maybe it'll interest some people, but that's what I'm saying. So there's always that, gotta be a little skeptical because it is coming from the internet. It's coming from the internet of wrestling fans. So is it going to succeed? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. Is it going to succeed? That's a tough call to make. It has potential, and hopefully this buzz gets bigger, and hopefully that the buzz gets bigger and it becomes more mainstream, and so that when it starts, there's more people coming in to watch it initially, because that'll certainly help them straight up. And again, like I said before, it'll be another place for guys to work, and you can't fault that. I mean, especially on a national level. It's one thing to say, okay, we're in a small town and you have 4 promotions running and 3 of them are garbage. That's different. But if you're talking on a national level, you really can't have oversaturation in that regard, especially now. Wrestling is it's sort of in that middle. It's not the Attitude Era by any metric. It's not as big as it was. The companies are still making money. I mean, WWE's ratings are tanking, but they've tried to address that, I guess, by having a McMahon on every program yet again. Vince McMahon's back, and all of these things, and they mixed around the main events and things like that. But they're making money on the network. They're making money on merchandise and house shows, so they're doing good there. So the business is okay. It's good. It's not as great as it was, but there's still room for another promotion. I think there's room, and there's a bunch of talent that, quite frankly, aren't in NXT, aren't in Ring of Honor, aren't being used elsewhere, or are being used elsewhere, but could use a national platform to work with. So will All Elite Wrestling succeed? It's hard to tell, but it has right now the most potential I've seen since the early days of TNA, and I think that's a good start. Now, a TV deal will be great once they said there's rumors. They're talking with TNT and TBS and all these things about national TV. I'll believe when I see it. When they put out a press release announcing it, when they actually debut the show, and it doesn't look like Wrestling Society X or some crappy wannabe wrestling promotion. The minute it shows up on TV and it has good production value, they've made it. If they show up and they look like TNA version 2 with worse production value, they're screwed. So, and I'm not saying this pessimistically. I'm saying this, I hope it does work out. I hope it does succeed. I hope they do the job they're trying to do. I hope they succeed. I hope they don't try to compete with the WWE immediately. They can compete with talent, bringing in, I got Jericho, you got AJ Styles, whatever, but I wouldn't try to compete directly, because that is the easiest way to get crushed. And even with WWE's ratings not doing great, coming in with, we're doing a solid 2 or 3, and someone coming in saying, we have established almost nothing, and we're on this network over here, you get a 1. Count your lucky star. So build your own product, and then, compete with Vince in due time, but really worry about your own product for at least the first few years, and just work on that. So that's my take on it. Again, this is all my opinion. I may be full of crap. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, I'm blowing smoke, this, that, or the other, send me a comment. If you have any ideas, you have something you want to talk about, if you have anything you want to talk about at all, or like I said, on this, if you think I'm full of crap and they're going to tank and be another World Wrestling All-Stars and Jeff Jarrett's going to be involved or whatever the hell, if you think that's what's going on, tell me. Let me know. Let me know what your opinion on this issue, one way or the other. Put a comment below the video if you're watching this on Facebook. If you're listening to this on our podcast channel, thank you for listening. I'm always interested to see where people are coming from, where people are listening to the show from. Because I'm just doing this out of my studio in Lima, Ohio. So if you know where that is, you live in Lima, Ohio. But yeah, until next time, my name's Dan. This is Exploder. Have a good one.